Breakfast with Steve Nenner.
So, shall we take a look at today's front pages? The Times leads with Number 10's plans to cut VAT to help reduce the tax bill for millions and ease inflation.
The Guardian has the latest sex scandal to rock Westminster after the Tory Deputy Chief Whip resigned last night amid sexual misconduct claims.
The Daily Mail covers those allegations against Tory Whip Chris Pincher, who stands accused of having groped two men at the Carlton Private Members Club.
The Eye leads on Theresa May's urges to the Prime Minister to ban trans conversion therapy.
The Express reports on the tragic death of 5-year-old Logan Mwangi, who was murdered by his family despite serious safeguarding concerns.
The Telegraph is going back to politics, those allegations of drunken groping by Chris Pincher.
The Mirror condemns social services for failing to intervene in that tragic case of 5-year-old murder victim Logan Mwangi, who died at the hands of his family.
Okay, let's go through some of those with broadcaster Mike Parry and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. Good morning to you both. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah.
Nikki, let's start with the Sun and the Pestminster Scandal, as someone's phrased it.
Yes, that hashtag Pestminster is back, isn't it? For the third time in a few months for Boris Johnson. So Chris Pincher, the Tory Deputy Chief Whip, has resigned because he's been accused of groping some men at the Carlton Club in London. Now, this is the second time that he has resigned, actually, as Chief Whip, and crucially, this is not resigning as a minister, this is just resigning from the position of Chief Whip, so he will still be sitting on the backbenches working in the Tory party.
Yes.
And Boris Johnson has apparently accepted his resignation and said, well, it's fine, he's kind of held his hand up, he said he's done the wrong thing, and therefore he can stay in the party. Now, of course, Angela Rayner and the Labour Party are very upset about this, saying that why should somebody stay in power, in a position of power, if they have, allegedly committed sexual assault? So,
Well, allegedly is the key.
allegedly is the key.
Well, he has admitted it.
And he has admitted it in the letter.
He's admitted being drunk.
And embarrassing himself and others, yes.
So apparently there isn't going to be any investigation on the part of the Tory party, as there would do usually. And what's so significant about this is when you are in a position of Chief Whip or Deputy Chief Whip, it's a pastoral role. So it's really about having the trust of the party members. It's really about caring for people. So, it's not like being an ordinary MP. So that kind of added issue.
It's about control as well, isn't it? It's about
It's
controlling
control.
members in the party.
So it really kind of throws up a lot of moral questions. And, how many times are we going to get these kinds of allegations and they just kind of be brushed aside? That's kind of the feeling from Labour.
It's all happened so suddenly because the incident apparently only happened the night before last.
Yeah.
So it's right. Now, what I can't find out in this story is, of course, it's all allegations, but are the police going to investigate this as well as the Tory party? And if that's the case, then shouldn't there be a period of abeyance when this man shouldn't have any part in the affairs of the nation because he's under investigation?
Well, there's no indication yet that the police are involved, but perhaps the two men involved,
This is what I'm saying.
involved in this, maybe it was just something they're brushing off themselves.
Well, that sounds to me like a credible theory. This happened in the Carlton Club. The Carlton Club is the Tory party at play, so to speak, and it's an inner sanctum where very few people get in apart from the upper echelons of the Tory party. But I love this man's letter to Boris. Last night I drank far too much. I've embarrassed myself and other people, which is the last thing I want to do. It doesn't actually get down to the allegations until way down the letter. It's almost like I'm stepping aside because I made an error of judgment and had too much to drink.
Yeah, it's quite cleverly written, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to gloss over everything,
But there is a question. He stepped down from his role as a junior member of the Whip's office.
He did.
In 2017.
4 years ago, I think he's 5 years ago stepped down, but then he got back in.
For having a go at having to get his hands on something.
Again, allegations, so that's the kind of tricky element of it.
And the point is the two gentlemen from the other night
Yes.
did complain to Number 10 about him.
They certainly complained to the hierarchy of the Tory party,
Yes.
absolutely, yes.
So they did complain about him. And frankly, it's not up to them whether or not the police want to press charges.
No.
The police have got to investigate.
Yes, it is, yeah.
If they want to investigate,
Yeah.
they've got to.
Yeah, absolutely. But once again, Boris is coming back, isn't he, after 8 days away. Gets off the plane this morning to go smashed in the face with another huge scandal like this, because it is a huge scandal, isn't it? It's shocking. It's allegedly shocking behaviour, although he admits to being drunk, obviously. But they're piling up now, aren't they? What can I say? Lifestyle personality scandals, which he has to deal with.
Sleaze allegations. About the
yeah.
party generally, and it's happened before, and here we go with Tory
Jane.
again.
Right, the standard is being set, and it's a lower standard than what
whose fault
our MPs.
Sorry?
Whose fault is it? When you have a company or any organisation where these sort of things start to happen more and more, you have to say, isn't it the man or woman at the top?
Yeah, the buck stops here, doesn't it? Yeah.
So,
well,
what are we saying about Boris?
yes, but are we getting over this? Dennis says a few bad apples don't ruin the cart, but the press is focusing on one MP in 300, makes it seem like the entire market is ruined.
But it's not just
But it's not just and comparatively, the Labour Party have not had the same amount of scandals, so that's why it kind of,
They haven't had the same scrutiny, though, have they?
No,
Jane says he's not resigned as an MP. Surely his very first apologies and resignation should be to his constituents.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Labour will pile in on it, because in politics you don't pile in on these things in case all of a sudden sitting behind you in the Commons there's another scandal just waiting to erupt. I think they have an understanding, don't they, not to try and embarrass each other on these things,
Yeah. Let's have a look at the Mirror, from the front page.
It's a most horrific story, and we have stories like this far too often in this country. Innocent lost in house of evil. Tragic Logan Mwangi died at the hands of his brutally dysfunctional family, including a 13-year-old described as a monster who moved in just 5 days later.
And it was the judge who described him as a monster as well.
Well, not only that, but what I don't understand is we have a huge welfare budget in this country, biggest in the world percentage-wise of our gross domestic product, and yet this lad, the one who's been called a monster, Mulligan, right, who was named by the judge because the judge was so horrified at his behaviour, this guy was with foster parents who'd been fostering children for 40 years, and this boy, the killer, the convicted killer, was the first that they sent back to the social services in 40 years because they said, this boy's completely out of control, he does nothing but talk about killing people. And yet, despite that, the victim, young Mwangi, was sent to live with his stepdad, right? His stepdad had also been barred from being alone with children because of previous criminal convictions, and his stepdad, his son, and the boy's own mother, between them, then killed the little boy, brain damage, kicking him downstairs, locking him up in rooms for 10 days at a time.
Only 5 days after the teenager moved into the house.
After 5 days after the teenager moved into the house, 5 days of hell. It's just the most horrific. I just don't understand. You know, once again, right, you get 10 paragraphs down the story, a case review is underway. Case reviews are always underway afterwards, but we need a bit more, proactivity in these sort of departments, social services departments, to make sure it doesn't happen again and again and again.
It's the repetition of these things.
It is.
So upsetting.
Yeah.
It just shows how difficult it is, though, I think, for anyone to be able to walk in and help manage a totally dysfunctional family.
Yes.
And that's what they've often said, there's no stitching up of the services. Somebody finds out a bit of information in one department and then someone else does in a different one, and they don't necessarily feed that information to each other.
Yeah.
So the system is broken.
Yeah, I totally agree. The system's broken because it's too complicated, too big, and has too many people pursuing careers instead of pursuing the benefits of the people that are supposed to look after children at risk. I'm told this all the time by social services departments. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians on the ground knocking on doors, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And too much red tape.
Absolutely.
From taking common sense decisions sometimes.
Absolutely.
What's Theresa May talking about in the Eye, Nikki?
Gosh, this is really interesting. So Theresa May is basically apologising for some of the decisions, votes that she cast when she was Prime Minister around LGBT rights. And she's come out and said that it's very important that we don't backtrack on trans conversion therapy. I don't know if you've kind of followed this story, but there's a conversion therapy bill. It aims to ban all kinds of conversion therapy. But when people read through the detail, it didn't protect the rights of trans people as well. And she's kind of come out very strongly and said to Boris Johnson, you must not renege on this. You've got to protect the rights of trans people. And, Theresa May famously didn't have the best voting record when it came to things like matching the age of consent for gay gay people and straight people, and you know, she's kind of come out and said I was wrong, and I think actually that's really brave of her and admirable,
Decent.
because it is decent, because you should be allowed to change your mind in politics or in life in general, and it should be acknowledged when you do it. So you know, it's actually a good news story.
Yeah, the reason I've done this is they've actually got a great feature today. They focused on 50 years of Pride, okay, 50th anniversary of Pride. So they've actually gone and asked all the Prime Ministers since, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, David Cameron, and journalistically, very cleverly pulled out the best line that they got, and that was Theresa May's, okay? So it's a very, very worthy campaign they've run. There's also a feature here on Peter Tatchell, who, in my view, is one of the bravest men I've ever met, because it's all very well walking up and down Westminster in this country campaigning for rights. Mr. Tatchell went to places like Russia and campaigned there and was beaten up in the streets, you know, by Russian policemen and that kind of thing. So I think if anybody should be saluted for, you know, the advancement that's been made over those 50 years, I think Peter Tatchell's a key figure.
Yeah, but he's an interesting character. He was so controversial, and he sort of barged into the pulpit of the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yes.
Yeah.
At a time when things were a lot worse here.
That's right, yeah.
He was one of the pioneers of it all.
Indeed.
Yeah, as you say, very brave.
Yeah, very, very brave
He's also
indeed.
mellowed. He used to be frightening to interview in the olden days.
Yeah, he did.
But that's because he had to be militant.
Absolutely.
But I remember interviewing him in the 80s, and
Yeah.
he was terrifying to interview, actually.
Yeah.
And he's really much more mellow and willing to just talk.
Yeah.
Well, he's brought the world around
He
to
has,
his way of
the world,
thinking.
exactly, absolutely.
And that's because, as you quite rightly say,
fascinating,
when we were watching the rail pickets the other day, Mr. Lynch was saying, well, we've got to be militant or else nobody will take any notice of us. And Peter Tatchell had exactly the same attitude all those years ago, you know?
There's a terrific documentary about him on Netflix, actually, and what it sheds a lot of light on his relationship with his family, and his mum in particular, who really did not accept his homosexuality.
No, he's Australian, isn't he?
Yes,
and it
Australian.
was even further backwards
And
there.
now that she's very, very old, you know, they've kind of had this reconciliation. She's really proud of him, and it's just really, really moving to watch, because he has done amazing work.
Yeah,
Yes, he has.
yeah,
Yeah,
indeed.
quite a character. Let's have a look at tax cuts.
Yes.
In the Times. Are we going to get all big tax cuts, Mike?
Well, never mind looking at tax cuts. I want tax cuts, okay, per se. And I'm not being selfish here. I want the economy to be rebooted, and you can only do that with tax cuts. Cutting VAT is not my favourite form of a tax cut. Why on earth did we go ahead with the national insurance rise, okay? Why are we still...
Well, the argument
Yes.
with the national insurance rise is, although the figure went up,
Yeah.
they also significantly raised the level at which you start paying it.
Yes, okay, but that's countered by the fact that people in fiscal drag have been dragged into the higher tax band, so that's cancelled that out. They're refusing to look at the green levies. Surely, I'm not saying scrap all green levies, but have a look at them, because that costs you. And I don't know where Rishi Sunak's getting his philosophy from these days. He's supposed to be a Tory Chancellor. He's already announced that corporation tax is going up to 26% next year, and keeps promising, don't worry, I'll bring some tax cuts. Mr. Sunak, if you're going to give us tax cuts, give us tax cuts now. This VAT one is being opposed by some people in the Treasury who say, no, can't give money back to the people. Oh, why not? Well, that'll cause inflation. Are you mad? We're in the midst of terrible inflation. One of the problems is because supply and demand is out of kilter. Give people back their money.
What are they going to drop it to?
They haven't said. They're just talking about cutting VAT to 17.5% from its current 20. Cuts would cost the government about 18 billion. 18 billion's not much, is it, in terms of what we spent over the last 3 years?
They were going to cut VAT a week or so ago.
Exactly.
They
And
keep flip-flopping about
and
it.
that's what I'm saying.
Is it too little, too late? I mean, I know what they're doing. They're drip feeding this information into the press to try and keep the public on side, but people can't wait till next year.
No, that's what I'm
to slow
saying.
down.
Why not do it now? Because if you do it now, you'll immediately people will
benefit.
feel better. Exactly.
And I'm more likely to vote for you in the
Yes,
next
indeed.
election whenever it's coming.
Exactly, but they have dragged all these people into the higher tax band. A total of 6.1 million people now pay the 40% rate of income tax. That's astonishing.
Does it say at what point that kicks in?
40%. Sorry, it's is it 39,000 or something like that?
I think it's gone up a bit from that.
Yeah, it's around that
Around
figure.
40,000.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we forget, don't we? 20% VAT.
Yep.
It was 15% not that many years ago.
That's right.
And then they upped it to 17.5. Then they upped it again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see why they can't drop it down.
No, exactly. I blame George Osborne for a lot of all this, you know. I thought he was a I thought he
He
was
gets away with it. Yeah.
I thought he was a shocking chancellor, honestly, you know. He poured taxes onto property and stamp duty and, to me, nobbled the economy altogether. And now, Tory chancellors don't believe they have to give the money back to the people. They want to spend all our money and we're so in debt. I can't believe that we can't stimulate the economy.
Mike for Chancellor, I say.
I'd get there, believe me.
Yeah. What about royal bullying in the Telegraph?
Oh my gosh, so do you remember there was that bullying report about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? It seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Because it feels like
Sussex. It's about Meghan and whether or not she was a bully.
It was about whether she bullied the staff when she was here. And apparently both Buckingham Palace and Meghan and Harry have kind of agreed to not talk about it anymore, which is quite an unusual move, actually. But it sounds like there's maybe some kind of reconciliation coming.
Well, is it a reconciliation or is it just Buckingham Palace deciding that it's easier if they don't publish the report because things are difficult enough with Harry and Meghan?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think they want that to be the legacy, you know, when you know, the Queen's maybe not that
Well,
well.
I think they're scared of what they might provoke.
Perhaps they
And
are.
I think you're spot on. I think this one has been swept under the carpet, you know what I mean?
Because it's just too awful.
Did you see the other day that Harry and Meghan were pictured again with Oprah Winfrey? So there's now a fear inside Buckingham Palace there's going to be Opera 2, following their visit for the Jubilee celebrations. The only problem with sweeping under the carpet is everybody's now under suspicion, aren't they? You know, if they would publish the report, then we'd know exactly what the allegations were and how solidly they've been stood up. But we don't. So, no, they're not going to publish it. We're happy now. I think Buckingham Palace are also frightened that it might reveal that the procedures that they had before Meghan arrived were completely unsuitable for the modern royal family and you know, in terms
But
of
if they're
service.
victims of real bullying,
Yes.
then it's not fair to them to let the report.
It's completely unfair, and it's completely unfair that
They've had to sign non-disclosure agreements, as you do when you work for the
they have, and now everybody's under suspicion. So, in a sense, I think Meghan's come out of this probably better than anybody because there's no new stories being written about her being a not very nice person, if that's the case, you know?
Yeah. Okay, look, Mike, Nikki, thank you very much indeed.